A group of treasure hunters looking for riches accidentally opened an ancient sarcophagus. They had no idea they had just unleashed a terrifying mummy imprisoned for thousands of years. The moment it woke up, dark, centuries-old powers roared back to life. A bloody game of death had just begun, and there was absolutely no way out. The story begins 3,000 years ago, during the reign of the pharaoh. The pharaoh had a breathtakingly beautiful queen named Anksu-Namun. According to the laws, no man but the pharaoh could ever touch her. The punishment for doing so was absolute death. However, the high priest of the palace, Imhotep, had secretly fallen in love with her. One day, while the two lovers were together in a hidden chamber, the pharaoh suddenly burst in. Seeing the smeared body paint on the queen, the pharaoh understood everything. Realizing there was no turning back, Imhotep drew his sword. Together with Queen Anksu-Namun, they brutally murdered the pharaoh. Hearing the guards rushing in, Imhotep's loyal priests managed to drag him away to safety, but the queen, finding herself trapped, drove a dagger into her own heart. Under the cover of night, Imhotep stole the queen's corpse and fled to Hamunaptra, the accursed city hidden deep within the desert. There, using the dark spells of the Black Book, he began a ritual to resurrect her. Just as the soul was returning to the body, the pharaoh's guards ambushed them, leaving the ritual incomplete. Furious, the guards punished Imhotep by turning him into a living mummy, sealing him alive inside a sarcophagus with thousands of flesh-eating scarab beetles. Time flew by, and the year was 1923. Hamunaptra had become a ghost town, a terrifying graveyard for anyone driven by greed. Around this time, a young woman named Evelyn and her brother Jonathan stumbled upon a mysterious key which hid a secret map to Hamunaptra. However, during a chaotic accident, the part of the map showing the exact location caught fire and burned away. Even with the map partially destroyed, the siblings refused to back down. They went to a Cairo prison to meet Rick O'Connell, a fearless former soldier and the only living man who knew the way to Hamunaptra by heart. On the condition of splitting the treasure 50-50, O'Connell agreed to lead their team, and they all set off for the lost city. During their journey on a river steamboat, they ran into a rival team of American treasure hunters led by O'Connell's old nemesis, Benny. Suddenly, in the dead of night, mysterious assassins attacked the ship. Evelyn's life hung by a thread, but O'Connell jumped in just in time, guns blazing. In the bloody firefight, the entire ship caught fire, forcing everyone to dive into the river to save themselves. Surviving the attack, O'Connell and his team finally reached the desert. As the first rays of the morning sun hit the horizon, the ghostly city of Hamunaptra began to emerge from the sand. Riding her camel, Evelyn was the first to enter the cursed ruins. Using the map and a series of mirrors, she cleverly redirected the sunlight into the dark catacombs, opening a hidden passage. As they stepped deeper into the ruins, the entire place echoed with eerie, bone-chilling whispers. Marching through the shadows, O'Connell's team suddenly found themselves staring down the barrels of the American team's guns. But just as the shootout over the treasure was about to erupt, Evelyn noticed a thin crack in the floor. Evelyn quickly realized that the ancient treasure was hidden right below that crack, deep within the earth. Rivalries were instantly forgotten as pure greed took over. Completely blind to the danger ahead, both teams began their descent into the dark underworld, where alongside piles of gold, their worst nightmare, Imhotep, was waiting to wake up. Blinded by the desire for riches, the prison warden slipped away from everyone else and ventured into a pitch-black tunnel alone. His eyes widened in shock when he saw glowing blue jewels embedded in the wall. The moment he pried one out with his knife, it fell to the ground, but it wasn't a jewel, it was a living, flesh-eating scarab beetle. In the blink of an eye, the insect burrowed into his boot. It tore through his flesh, crawling up from his stomach to his head, leaving the warden to die a slow, agonizing death right there. Meanwhile, the American team discovered a mysterious sarcophagus buried beneath a massive rock formation. Too terrified to touch it themselves, they pushed their workers to the front line. However, the moment the workers struck the sarcophagus with a crowbar to move it, a centuries-old acid trap was triggered. A horrific shower of pressurized acid sprayed over them, dissolving the workers into skeletons within seconds. On the other side of the ruins, O'Connell was taking a breather while Jonathan, messing around, picked up a stick and took a golf swing. Unfortunately, his shot hit the exact trigger of an ancient mechanism. With a thunderous crash, a massive stone sarcophagus plummeted from above. Examining its unique craftsmanship, Evelyn, the Egyptologist, immediately realized that a catastrophic sinner had been buried inside. Without wasting a moment, Evelyn fitted the mysterious puzzle box, the key, into the lock of the sarcophagus. As the key clicked and turned, the heavy lid popped open. Resting inside was a 3,000-year-old mummy whose flesh was so remarkably preserved it looked as if he had died only yesterday. Just then, O'Connell noticed deep scratch marks on the inside of the lid. It was crystal clear. The man had been buried alive, left to claw his way through a slow, claustrophobic death. In another section of the catacombs, the American team unearthed an ancient chest. As their Egyptologist read the warning carved onto it, his face went completely pale. Whosoever opens this chest and reads the first incantation shall awaken the mummy, and it will become the bringer of death for all. Hearing this, the cowardly Benny shrieked in terror and bolted. The others, ignoring the warning, forced the chest open. Through a cloud of black smoke, they found the black book and precious golden jars, which they quickly divided among themselves. In the dead of night, Evelyn noticed one of the Americans unsuccessfully trying to force the book open. Once everyone had fallen asleep, she crept over, swiped the book, and brought it back to her tent. Driven by pure curiosity, she unlocked it with the key, found a page, and unknowingly read aloud the first terrifying line to awaken the mummy. "He who has slept for centuries, let him awaken upon hearing this." The moment the words left her mouth, a blood-curdling shriek from the mummy shattered the desert silence. Within moments, the night sky turned pitch black as a colossal swarm of billions of flesh-eating locusts descended upon the camp. Total chaos erupted. Anyone too slow to run was chewed alive by the swarming insects, and the entire camp echoed with agonizing screams. In the middle of the frantic stampede, the bespectacled American man tripped and fell, sending his glasses flying into the dirt. Benny ran right past him, but instead of helping, he deliberately crushed the glasses under his boot and kept running. Blindly searching for a way out, the helpless man froze as a massive, towering dark shadow rose directly behind him. Before he could even realize what was happening, his final, agonizing scream cut through the air. As O'Connell, Jonathan, and Evelyn were running for their lives, the ground beneath them began to violently shake. The soil erupted under their feet, unleashing millions of deadly scarab beetles. To save themselves, the three split up and sprinted in different directions. In the sheer panic, Evelyn got separated from the group and ended up running straight into a hidden, dark chamber. Inside the pitch-black room, Evelyn spotted the near-sighted American man. Breathing a sigh of relief, she stepped closer, only for a blood-freezing scream to get caught in her throat. The man's eyes and tongue had been violently ripped out, and the freshly resurrected mummy, Imhotep, had attached them to his own decaying body. Evelyn froze in pure terror, but to her absolute shock, Imhotep didn't attack. Instead, he simply stared at her with a haunting, strangely familiar look in his eyes. The moment Imhotep saw Evelyn in the room, he called out the name of his ancient lover, Ankh-Su-Namun, in a deep, booming voice. Just then, O'Connell rushed in and grabbed Evelyn's hand, driving Imhotep into a blind fury. Without hesitation, O'Connell unleashed a barrage of shotgun fire at the creature, but the bullets passed right through him without doing any damage. While fleeing, they crossed paths with the Medjai. The black-clad warriors descended from the pharaoh's guards. They delivered a chilling warning. Imhotep cannot be killed by human weapons. If you value your lives, run. Meanwhile, the traitorous Benny was hopelessly lost and wandering through the catacombs when Imhotep materialized right in front of him. Staring death in the face, Benny trembled with fear, pulling out pendants of various religions from his pocket and frantically reciting prayers. The moment he chanted a Hebrew prayer, Imhotep, hailing from ancient Egypt, realized this greedy man could be useful. Handing him gold coins, Imhotep made Benny his slave and set his sights on the targets who had stolen the sacred canopic jars. As soon as Imhotep completely drained the blood of his first victim, the near-sighted American, fireballs began raining down from the sky. By the time O'Connell and Evelyn reached the room, the man had withered into a shriveled mummy, while Imhotep, having regained a portion of his strength, was reforming into a solid, muscular body. O'Connell's attacks proved useless, and Imhotep effortlessly threw him across the room. But just as the monster advanced toward Evelyn, a white cat suddenly stepped into view. At the mere sight of the feline, Imhotep shrieked in absolute terror and dissolved into a swirling sand vortex, escaping through the window. Seeking answers to this bizarre phobia, O'Connell and his team immediately dashed to the Cairo Museum. There, they discovered that in ancient Egypt, cats were revered as the guardians of the underworld, which was why Imhotep feared them. However, this fear would only last until he consumed the blood of the remaining jar thieves and achieved his full power. His ultimate goal was to sacrifice Evelyn to resurrect his lover, Ankh-Su-Namun. Imhotep's power grew exponentially, casting a supernatural darkness over the entire city during the broad daylight. O'Connell's team raced to save the remaining Americans, but Imhotep managed to hunt down another one, draining his life force. Next, he turned into a roaring sandstorm and breached Evelyn's bedroom. Just as he moved to hypnotize her, O'Connell leapt into the room at the nick of time, holding the cat. Seeing the feline, the demon's face turned pale with dread, and he vanished into thin air through the window. The lines were now drawn for an all-out war. Inside the museum, Evelyn discovered an ancient stone tablet and successfully decoded its mysterious hieroglyphs. The tablet revealed a crucial secret. Just as Imhotep had been awakened by the Book of the Dead, if someone were to find the Book of Amun-Ra, the Golden Book, hidden in Hamunaptra, and read its first incantation, all his powers would be stripped away, sealing him back into his grave forever. They had barely found the solution when the agonizing screams of thousands echoed from outside. Using his dark magic, Imhotep had hypnotized the entire population of Cairo. The brainwashed mob was now marching toward the museum, chanting Imhotep, Imhotep, in a trance. Jonathan quickly cranked up an old car. As O'Connell and the team piled in and sped off, the crazed crowd swarmed the vehicle from all sides. In the utter chaos, the mob dragged away the last remaining American, allowing Imhotep to consume his blood and reclaim 100% of his absolute power. Armed with his full strength, Imhotep trapped O'Connell's team in a lethal dead end. Seeing no way out, Imhotep offered a deal. "If Evelyn comes with me, I shall spare the lives of the rest." To save her friends, Evelyn agreed to hand herself over to the monster. However, the moment she stepped forward, Imhotep brutally broke his promise, ordering the mob to slaughter everyone. Showing incredible reflexes, O'Connell ripped open a street manhole and led the group as they dove into the filthy sewers below. While fleeing through the sewers, the museum curator, a loyal Medjay leader, held off the mob, sacrificing his life with a smile to give O'Connell and Jonathan a chance to escape. O'Connell knew Imhotep would take Evelyn straight back to Hamunaptra. Desperate to rescue her from the jaws of death, they rushed to the Giza air base to seek help from Winston, their eccentric fighter pilot friend who wanted nothing more than one last thrilling flight in his life. Winston's small fighter plane was ready, but it was desperately short on space. Left with no choice, Jonathan and another team member were securely strapped with ropes directly onto the plane's wings. Winston throttled the engine, tearing through the sky toward Hamunaptra. The only problem was that Jonathan barely knew the basics of the ancient Egyptian language. Panicking, he flipped through the pages, loudly reciting the wrong incantations. At the very last second, while fighting for her life, Evelyn screamed out the correct words to him. Guided by her help, Jonathan finally found the right spell and chanted the magical words to bring the mummies to their knees. "Stop!" The moment the ancient incantation was completed, a mystical hum vibrated through the air. The hands of the mummies advancing on Evelyn froze mid-air. All the guardian mummies suddenly turned peaceful and stood perfectly still. Realizing the immense power he now wielded, Jonathan barked a command in a commanding voice to the guardians, "Destroy Ankh-Su-Namun." Hearing this, the ground slipped from beneath Imhotep's feet. Boiling with unbridled rage, he lunged to tear Jonathan limb from limb. But before Imhotep could touch him, the mummy guardians turned their axes upon Ankh-Su-Namun, hacking her to death once more. Watching his beloved die before his eyes all over again, Imhotep completely lost his mind. Shrieking in agony, he charged forward, grabbed Jonathan by the throat, and hoisted him into the air. Jonathan began to choke, but right in the nick of time, O'Connell delivered a devastating blow from behind with his heavy sword, severing Imhotep's right hand, which thudded onto the floor. With the hand severed, Jonathan slipped from Imhotep's grip. Writhing in pain, Imhotep redirected his entire fury toward O'Connell, launching a lethal assault. While the two were locked in a life-and-death struggle, Jonathan, lying on the floor, seized the moment and stealthily snatched the mystical key from Imhotep's waist. Jonathan immediately threw the key to Evelyn. Without wasting a single heartbeat, Evelyn inserted the key into the golden book, the pages unlocked, and she began chanting the most powerful spell meant to wipe out Imhotep. Right at that moment, tearing through the ceiling of the cavern, a divine golden chariot of the gods descended from the heavens. The chariot swept through Imhotep with the speed of lightning, stripping away his centuries-old immortality and all his unholy powers in a single flash. Now, Imhotep was left with nothing but a frail, mortal human body. Trembling with pain and fury, he stepped toward O'Connell, but this time O'Connell stepped forward fearlessly and drove his sword straight through the monster's chest. The immortal mummy was now nothing more than a dying corpse. The moment the blade struck him, Imhotep stumbled backward and fell straight into the boiling pool of black water. Before their very eyes, the dark forces dragged him down, swallowing him whole forever. O'Connell, Evelyn, and Jonathan finally exhaled a sigh of relief. The nightmare was over. But their peace lasted only a few seconds. Suddenly, the entire ruin began to violently shake and the massive stone doors started to shift. While everyone else had been fighting for their lives, their greedy companion Benny had slipped away into the deepest depths of the cavern in search of treasure. In his desperate rush to steal the gold, Benny accidentally triggered a hidden ancient booby trap. Instantly, the entire cavern began to collapse and the heavy stone doors started closing one by one. Benny tried to run, but it was already too late. The greedy traitor was buried alive, trapped forever amidst the golden treasure, the suffocating darkness, and the flesh-eating beetles. On the other side of the collapsing ruins, O'Connell, Evelyn, and Jonathan pushed their bodies to the absolute limit, leaping and dodging through falling boulders until they finally burst out into the open air alive. Stepping outside, they looked back to see that the entire ancient city of Hamunaptra had crumbled into a pile of dust. But the story ended in true cinematic fashion. Stranded with them were camels packed to the brim with heavy bags of gold and priceless artifacts. The three of them shared a victorious smile, mounted their camels, and rode off toward the horizon on a brand new journey. And with that, the first chapter of The Mummy comes to a spectacular, happy ending.